Good morning, friends. Welcome back to the channel. Please excuse the noise. The last time I was making a video out in this location, I don't know, several months ago, also happened to be the day that they were grinding metal over there at the construction site. So what can you do? Today I want to talk to you about the differences between the yellow deck and the black deck STX38 lawn mowers, and thoughts on if you're considering converting a manual transmission version to a hydrostatic transmission version, and what the process would entail if you're trying to convert the two. And I'm going to tell you the tale of these two tractors, these two lawn mowers, in today's episode. So welcome back. Hopefully you'll check it out, and hopefully this will be of some use to you. Alright, so the first thing I want to mention is you'll notice that we're not at the farm today, but I'm still uploading this to my farm channel for farm related content. So I'm out here at my place of work, place of employment, and I spend a week at a time out here, and so usually I bring projects out and I try to take care of these little small jobs in my off time while I'm out. So one thing I want to talk to you about is these are old lawnmowers, and I want to talk about kind of my philosophy is I'm always looking for a good value, a good bargain. I'm something of a bargain hunter, you might call it. And so I don't have a real affinity to really old tractors, old lawnmowers, but what I have found is that all of the newer models that you see at Home Depot and the other big box stores, with the exception of the John Deere and the John Deere of this yard mower tractor size available at the John Deere dealer, most all of the current offerings are just, it just seems like they're built to fall apart. They're just kind of built not to last, and they're not built to hold up real well. And for $2,000 to $3,000 for kind of a entry-level riding mower, you know, I just don't find a lot of value in that, spending that much money on something that's essentially designed to just be thrown away. Yeah, you could probably get 10 years or more worth of trouble-free service on one of those things. So, you know, it's the value maybe is there, but these two machines right here are from the early 90s, early to mid 90s. How many years is that? That's 30 years. You know, they were built to last. Now, one of the reasons why I like to always look for a good value is, you know, I do spend a lot of money on pretty high-end stuff, but by always looking for a good value, I just feel like it enables you to find a good quality item for a lot cheaper, and it enables you to save money for the nicer things that maybe you want to buy brand new. For example, my motorcycle right there, and the truck over there. So both of those are good examples of bargain shopping and looking for a good deal. And you can check out my other channels. I'll post a link over here. There's a lot of content associated with that motorcycle on my other channel, as well as that truck on the third channel. I've got several YouTube channels, so stick with me here. Now, in doing all my research, after I located this lawnmower on the local classifieds, I found there's a lot of content on mytractorforum.com and probably even on Green Tractor Talk. And there's a lot of discussion about the differences between the yellow deck, which is the earlier model, and the black deck, later model mower decks, and the changes that happened between these two STX38 lawnmowers over their production run. So today we're going to take a look at some of the differences on the strengths and weaknesses, at least what is apparent here on the two decks at least, as well as kind of some of the differences that you'll see on the earlier versus later model STX38. But before we do that, I'm going to tell you the story of actually acquiring these two mowers. So as I mentioned before, I use the local classifieds. It's called kslclassifieds.com. It's like the local news channel here in Utah, to buy almost everything. I love it, man. And I sell quite a bit of stuff on there too. And I'm always looking for a good value, a good bargain on there. And so on that day, I rode out to John Deere to look at my new tractor that they're building for me, that 2038R, which you can check out the series, which we should be taking delivery of that new tractor in a week and a half. So super excited about that. And that tractor, talking about a value, it's one of the first and only things I've ever bought brand new. It comes with a 6-year warranty, and it kind of has a bigger price tag than that pickup truck that I have right there, but it's going to be worth it. We're going to use it a lot, I'm sure. So anyways, the new property, you know, it needs a mower. So scouring classifieds and found a STX38 mower. So I go over to the fella's house. Really nice guy. I've had some great interactions with the guy. He's super awesome. He's got quite a few different mowers and John Deere tractors, smaller John Deere tractors, yard tractors, and I think a big case front loader dozer or something. So, you know, he's an old fella who's been around a long time and been dealing with these things a lot. You'll notice that this is not an STX38 hood. Okay, but we'll come back to that here in a minute. So I get this first tractor right here, and real quick, over the last 5 days now, I have taken all of the good parts and all the things necessary off of the original tractor I bought and converted it over to the other tractor that I bought. So I'll go over all the details of which pieces and parts were changed in order to get that thing up and running. But back to the story here. So I get this one, and I get it home. I paid $475 for it. It's not in great shape for $475. It did have the black seat on it, but you know, it's not a real super well cared for machine like you see on all the internet, at least going for $400 to $600 on these old things. So either way, I picked it up for $475. I get it home. I'm super stoked about it. I run it for about 20 minutes. And what I did is I broke the transmission on it. I'm pretty damn sure I broke the transmission. So how I did that was, I have these little embankments on the backyard down there, up around the basketball court, and I had it in first and or second gear a couple different times, can't recall, but I kind of tractored up mowing, and then as it was rolling and coasting back down, only like 6 feet down, I started shifting the gear lever here. And I was going from second into first, or whatever, first into neutral and into reverse. And I heard a clunk and a clank, and pretty soon the clutch, anytime you'd let the clutch out, the transmission was seized and the belt would start smoking. The drive belt would start smoking underneath there. So I parked it. I wasn't able to move it. You know, this doesn't have the hydrostatic like that one does, so it doesn't have a lever to put it into a neutral position to roll it. And sure enough, the transmission was just locked up. So I had to leave that lawnmower there in the spot for the next week and a half, whatever, while I went out to work. So I called the fella up who sold it to me, and I'm like, hey man, I think I might have broke that transmission. And I told him a couple ideas I had about it, and he's like, yeah, you might have broke that transmission. He's like, I can't really think of anything, I don't know. So he says, well, why don't you come back out here, bring your trailer out here. I'll let you borrow my LX178, I think. The next kind of style and size up from this. He's like, you can borrow that, and that way you'll be able to go back and get your property mowed. And then what I'll do is, that other machine that was sitting over here, if you want to buy that with the other transmission in it for $100, I'll throw that in. You can have it for $100. A whole secondary parts tractor. And I was like, well, let me think about it. Went and grabbed his other mower, and in fact I brought that one back to the house, to the farm. So I kind of had 3 of them on hand at the time. And so I mowed the yard with the big tractor and kind of determined that, you know what, my property probably might need that bigger tractor. But he wanted me to pay him $600 for that. So I would have been over about $1,200, right? $1,300 into this whole deal. I guess $1,200 into this whole deal. And so I kind of determined, you know what, I'll save my $600. I'll take that one for $100 and hope for the best. Hopefully I can put the two together. Okay. So then that brings us to getting it out here. So I struggled and I got the dang thing onto the trailer and got both of them on the trailer, brought them out here to work, and started investigating what was wrong with this transmission, and confirmed that it wasn't a clutch release mechanism, it wasn't the emergency brake, parking brake mechanism, and proceeded to go ahead and pull out that transmission. So I pulled out that transmission, just completely removed it, and started running through the gears and seeing what it was doing, and it's just making weird noises. And sure enough, the damn transmission's locked up. So watched several YouTube videos on the dismantling of that manual transmission, and kind of determined there's probably these two what would you call them, detent gear selector finger components inside that probably snapped and broke. So I had to decide, well, I could either pull the whole thing apart on the workbench over here and do a deep dive investigation to see, and then maybe order the right parts, or what I can probably try to do is just start seeing if this other mower is going to work for me. So the other mower has the black deck on it. It's a newer model. It does have a 13 horsepower Kohler instead of a 12.5 horsepower Kohler. But it was just kind of like, well, why don't I just start seeing if this other one's going to work? Now, the funny thing is I didn't even know if this other tractor was going to work at all. It didn't even run. So the condition I bought this one in had this broken gas tank, a white version gas tank, okay? And so what happens on these old things is the STX38s had plastic hoods, which, you know, when they sit out and get neglected for decades or several years, the plastic breaks down, and the next thing you know, your tank is getting sun damage. And so that thing didn't even run. So I kind of was going on good faith in hopes that if I start to convert all the shit over to that one, I could at least get it running, it would run, and that the transmission itself would work, the hydrostatic transmission would work. So that's what I proceeded to do. So in the process, let me show you all of the different things that had to be converted over to get this thing running, just for the story of these two machines. And then we'll get back to the differences on if you want to do the conversion of a yellow deck to the later model black deck, which is what I'd like to do, but I'm going to show you the challenges of what you got to deal with and what I'm going to have to kind of come back around to if I want to make that happen. So let's start over here. Let's just start with everything that came off of that other machine onto this machine, okay? This is a hood, a fiberglass hood, pretty good shape, from I think any of the models of a LX, I think an LX 160, 165, 170, 180, whatever. These hoods can be bought on eBay, classifieds for $100. The plastic ones of the original STX38 which have the really cool ventilation in the sides, man, those things go for $300 to $400 a piece. There might be some available brand new, but there's quite a few available used. Again, $300. So I'm not going to put a $350 plastic hood on my $450 tractor. I mean, these things are cool and everything, but I'll probably invest in a proper zero-turn mower within the next few years for the property. But for the time being, you know, what the heck, kind of enjoying working on my first riding mower. So you'll see it's got the front ventilation, which is going to help, okay, because it's kind of enclosed, so it can't breathe as well. The STX38s have an enclosed front with the side vents. The STX38s, you can put I've seen they sell a headlight kit for it, but I don't think it generally comes stock that way. And so this one has a headlight kit, which I'd like to upgrade to just a nice 11 or 12 inch light bar inside there, a floodlight, which would be kind of cool. So maybe that'll come down the road. I did pick up some paint. You'll see the paint work that was done in here. So I may touch this thing up, or I may even just repaint the whole hood. So it doesn't really fit on there super great. It's a bit oversized, but you know, good enough. And it's classic, and it's vintage, and it's solid. So talking again about all the parts that came off of that other machine to get this one up and running. Let's let this Zoom Boom forklift get the heck out of the way. Good grief. Okay, so the fellow I bought it from, he fabricated this little bracket here. Okay, so that had to come off of the other one. And you get a nice bumper, nice front bumper with that. Okay, so the hood, let's just start at the hood. I just got done painting those and getting those installed this morning. Okay, so that's how that works. Just some basic steel plate, but I did upgrade the stainless hardware, so that's pretty nice. Now, this has a little bit larger size tires than that other machine does. So I brought the tires over onto this one. This one has a bad sidewall, but it does have a tube in this one. Okay, you can see how the tube sticks out there. So I don't know, maybe we'll get a full lifespan out of that. Again, this is the 13 horsepower. So the fuel tank had to come from that other one. I've heard how the paper filters don't work too well, so I went down to Napa and got this nice screen one. This thing was super filthy. You can see remnants inside there, but I got it cleaned up with oven cleaner and the pressure washer. And what I'm suspecting is that bowl gasket right there, the kind of small O-ring, when I took it apart to clean it, looks like it was quite enlarged and probably hasn't had a good seal for many years. I think the last guy that put it back on didn't get it sealed right, and so I'll bet you that most of the grease and grime was from just seeping fuel forever. So that O-ring had to come from the other carburetor, so that was essential. Okay, we upgraded the fuel lines here. Fuel tank, like I said. This entire steering column assembly, to include the steering wheel and the throttle linkage, came off of the other transmission, off of the other tractor. Let's take a look at the one that came on this one real quick. This one has a slightly different, what do you call it here? Whatever, gear arrangement, sector shaft, okay? And it's hella loose and kind of problematic, and the other one was quite a bit tighter. You'll notice that these have larger holes. We'll come back to that here in a minute. But, of course, this one used a screw, which I was unable to get out, even with my number 2 Phillips head screwdriver and impact gun. So this is gonna become one of those, you gotta weld a nut onto it so you can back it out. So it was kind of becoming quite problematic. So I just decided to pull the entire arrangement off of this machine. So the steering's quite a bit tighter and works quite a bit better. Okay, the seat came off of the other one. Not sure exactly what type of seat this is or where it came from, but this is how he had that thing rigged up. Okay. And the starter. So this thing came with the starter, the newer type starter that doesn't have a solenoid or a kick-out solenoid. Let's take a look at that. So I stuck the old one, I stuck the one off of that machine back over here, and you'll see it's basic. So that's one of the major differences is, we'll come back to that here in a second. But so the starter had to come off of this one, off of that one, and put it on here. And when I installed the new steering system, I had to convert the steering linkages from the other one over to this, which are much better steering arms. However, there's a different size there, so I had to put a bronze bushing in there and cut that off at the bottom and get it so that it's a good fit. So that pretty much covers all the differences of what had to come off of that thing to put on here. So for $100, to get an entirely new black deck, a spare engine, a spare set of 2 wheels, decent tires, a spare muffler, all these spare parts, that's pretty good value for $100. And without having spent that $100 on an entire other tractor's worth of spare parts, this other one would have been, you know, I mean, just you would be into it a lot for all those parts. Carburetor bowl, gasket, that's nothing. You can buy those carburetors for like $15 on Amazon, the whole carburetor. You kind of have to get it fit and working right, but anyway. Starter motor, gaskets, steering linkages, all these things, okay? The one last thing I'd kind of like to pull off of here is the foot rubber cushion and install that. Probably have to get the heat gun or something, propane heater on that, and soften that up, and hopefully I can slide it over. But now let's take a look at the transmission differences real quick. So man, when I first got the thing together, offloaded at the house, man, I was having a hoot. I mean, clutch action, 5 different gears, that's awesome. Super fun. Really enjoyed it. So it's kind of a shame that it just doesn't work. Now, I should have taken some video before I put it all back together, but I wasn't sure I was going to make a video about it all. And so here we are. Now, the big problem I found with wanting to put that hydrostatic transmission into this machine, which this kind of was the original, and everything else was in good shape, is primarily this area right here isn't designed to accept that, with some slots and stuff over here for the shift lever mechanism, which is right here. Okay, so I would have to somehow drill out a rounded notch section there, okay, to allow for the shifting and whatnot. And so that was problem number 1. I think that the transmission itself would have bolted up under it probably just fine. I think that the bolts, it will accept that just fine. But the biggest problem is going to be the belt drive arrangement down below. Okay, belt drive arrangement. To convert not needing a clutch pulley for the hydrostatic, it was just gonna be pretty involved, and I was probably already gonna have to cut and weld and drill and do all sorts of different shit with it. And so that's kind of when I decided, you know what, I'm not even gonna try to mess around with putting that other transmission in here. We're just gonna convert everything over to this hydrostatic version. So once again, added to the value is that second one I bought has a pretty new, decent belt drive belt under it, and it also has a pretty decent, a little bit of fraying here, but it'll last another season or 2, I'm sure. Pretty decent functional belt, which that's a major difference on that one, and all of the belts on that one were shot. So I mean, what are you going to be, another $25 to $40 in belts just to get that one running? So all the more reason why I should just get the second machine up and running. Let me talk about the starter motor real quick, the steering linkage differences, kind of the mods I had to do to both of those, and then we'll talk about these mower decks here. Cool, now we got dogs barking too. Okay, so the difference is when that style of starter motor is on this engine, okay, what you have there is a wire from the key switch, right? You turn the key, sends a hot signal right there to engage the solenoid. Let's take a look at it over here. So since this tractor wasn't equipped with that wire, what I had to do was jumper wire that thing, basically from the hot side. So in this instance, imagine the other starter motor being on here, which is designed to just, as soon as it gets in power, it just spins up fast enough that it pushes the gear out and to engage with the flywheel. Well, this one just wasn't doing that. It would spin, but apparently not enough to shoot it up into the intersect the teeth there, which
Could be caused by a low battery voltage, but it was not in this case. So instead of messing around with it, I think it was just a faulty starter, and those starters are pretty damn cheap. This one is probably an original one, or at least a heck of a lot better with this kick out solenoid. So back to the point is, when you turn on the key over there, you've got a relay that brings power from the battery up through this big wire. And then once this thing's energized, well, if you just put a jumper over to here to also engage the contacts inside to draw the magnet to draw this down, which then kicks the gear up. It's just kind of a shortcut, a bypass, okay? So instead of running a big wire all the way from the key switch or whatever, which would be what this wire was, I just ran that jumper. Okay, so this thing's all kind of just put back in here, just so I have a place to store it essentially, but that's pretty much a bad, broken starter motor. So that kind of resolves that, okay? Lastly, the steering linkages, okay? When they went to the black decks, they put these kind of cheaper steering linkages on, and what they do is all they do is have a cotter pin and a washer. So not nearly as good as the joint end type, but you'll notice that these are too big to fit in the other steering drop down. So these holes on the original are smaller, along with the steering sector area to accept those parts, versus the newer model has the larger holes at both ends. Larger steering linkages, larger holes at the steering, whatever that thing is, steering arm. Okay, so that's basically the only mods I had to do to get this thing working. Okay, so real quick, let's just talk about the differences of what you'll have to do and why it's kind of, it would be quite a trick to actually convert a yellow deck under this one. First and foremost is you'll notice the yellow decks have these connectors for the front. When they went to the black deck, they converted that to this arrangement here. So what that means is the under the front axle, the thing that accepts what hangs the front deck on is an entirely different style. So this whole front axle will have to be swapped out, or you'll have to hack off and weld on this style here. See that with the multiple holes instead of just a round hole? So that's starting from the front to the back. That's the first problem. The first thing you're gonna have to modify that will require some welding. Another thing you'll notice is there's some differences between this thing and this thing. Okay, so this one's a bit taller, that one's a bit shorter. Not sure how well that would mesh with, you know, the original carriers on this arrangement here. Okay, so that's kind of questionable. Not sure how well that'll work. Probably won't be too hard to just change this, put the black pieces on the yellow deck perhaps. But the biggest problem, which you may see here, is probably the belt routing. But I'm not sure on that one. All I know is that you end up having two belts on this one instead of the one, but it's relatively coming out of the same area. So, you know, if you just got the right size belt, maybe a shorter one of these or something, it would probably work still. But you can see how they simplified that into a single belt system instead of this whole arrangement here. Okay, so that's gonna be really the major challenges to convert this thing over. So it could be done without too much hassle, I'm sure. So it's kind of nice to have a secondary spare one. Real quick, I mean, like, go on eBay right now, the yellow decks, those things sell themselves for $400. Between $300 and $450 is what I've seen them going for. So, I mean, when you consider that, you know, the value is here in these two mowers for $575, even though it seemed kind of steep for an old, ratty old John Deere mower at the time. Okay, now
Last thing we're gonna talk about, I guess, is the sturdiness of these two decks. So you'll see that they say that it is 3 gauge steel. I might have the numbers off. 2.5 gauge steel for the black one, and 3 gauge steel for the front one, for the yellow one. So you're thinking, well, I mean, maybe that's the weight reduction savings is gonna be, you know, maybe it won't be that bad. And how bad really can it be? I mean, how much worse off is a black deck than a yellow deck? How much stronger is a yellow deck than a black deck? Well, again, I don't plan to be using this thing for more than just a couple years, maybe. That could change, but when I started looking at it, I realized, well, holy crap, there's some broken areas right through here. This thinner steel, you know, sure enough, did crack. And people say on the forums, you know, it's like, yeah, so long as it's not abused, it'll probably hold up fine. Well, what constitutes abuse? Was this thing abused? I can't imagine it was, so I don't know. Anyway, you can see that it's cracked and broke. So if I really cared about it, I would try to go through the hassle of busting out the welder over there and repairing this thing. But I think for the time being, we're just gonna kind of wing it and see how she does. But let's take a look real quick underneath. I'll flip them both over. So real quick, one more added value is this black deck. I did sharpen it with my grinder. It's probably not the best way to sharpen these things, but I'm not too concerned about it. But it did come with the converted mulch blades, which throw the grass up higher versus the old-fashioned standard, more flat blades. So again, a little bit better value, but you'll see how the weld's cracked right through here. So that's that thinner gauge steel. And I think that the wheels are probably just as good quality. You got some nice, what do you call it, nickel plated connectors there. Okay, this thing's a bit more stout. The hanger brackets, you got these kind of eccentric bolts for whatever you need that adjustment capability for. And then you got these ones that are just a single piece hanger. Actually, those are about the same thickness, but see, here you go. This thing probably shoved a rock through there, or who knows what happened. But there you have it. There's the thinner gauge versus the thicker gauge all around. So it's kind of neat. It's kind of neat. I'm sure I'll just throw that on the shelf somewhere and hang on to it. And at some point, we'll probably get around to converting this thing over. Maybe I'll do that before I sell it. But at this point, let's be honest, it is quite a Frankenstein machine. So anyways, there you go. A tale of two mowers. Well, there you go, folks. Thanks for checking out the video. Thanks for checking out the channel. Hopefully it's at least amusing to you if you're into these old tractors, these old lawnmowers. I would personally only ever call them a lawnmower, a riding mower. But John Deere themselves are the ones that put tractor on the damn data plate. So take it up with them. Anyway, this is probably maybe the eighth video I've uploaded to the channel, and so not generally your typical type of content, but it's related to equipment I'm running on the farm, and can't wait to get back home and put this thing to use and mow down some of them tall grasses. So thanks for checking out the video. Hopefully you can poke around the rest of the channel, find some other stuff that interests you, and be happy to have you around. Leave a comment, tell me what your thoughts are. So we're just starting out this channel, and happy to be doing it. This is a channel I can kind of do with my family, and because I'll be there for the most part, all of it. And so I encourage you to check out some more videos, and we'd be happy to have you along. And if you wanted to subscribe and participate, see what we're building here. Trying to turn this old century-old dairy farm into a good grief. Sirens too? Dogs, sirens, grinding metal, and forklift zoom booms driving by. I'm in the country pretty much, but you would think this is a little town called Roosevelt. Anyway, we're trying to build something, trying to turn it into a little tree farm, and it's going to be a fun learning process, and we'd love to have you along. So stay tuned.